Today on CityCast Chicago, unconstitutional police stop leads to suspensions, but is it enough? Plus, why are property tax appeals so tough? Rat birth control is popping up in Lincoln Park. And yes, the first ever American Pope was born on the south side of Chicago. It's Friday, May 9th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. Adora, what is your good news for us today?
My good news is I am just anticipating finding out who the next pope is, because we're going to understand the priorities of the Catholic Church based on that person's leadership and what they want to see happen, what kind of issues they're going to focus on. So I'm just waiting to see some white smoke, because right now we're just seeing black smoke that shows no pope has been chosen.
So when Adora shared this story with me earlier, sort of her building excitement around the conclave, we've had a couple of days of black smoke, which means the Cardinals had not voted on a new pope. I mean, it would have been cool if this news had come down while we were recording, but right when we hopped off, we got the white smoke symbol, which officially means that a new pope had been voted in. Cardinal Robert F. Prevost has taken the name Leo XIV as he was announced as the 267th pope. Interestingly enough, this is the first ever American pope, and yes, he was born on the far south side of Chicago in Dalton. Spent some of his young life at the old St. Mary of the Assumption. We are hoping to talk about this early next week, how much of a shock this was to people who were paying attention, even as Prevost's name started being floated, what this could mean for the city of Chicago, for area Catholics. So please make sure you're back here early next week. Let's keep things going. I am joined on this beautiful morning by WTTW's Heather Sharon. Heather, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
And we've also got freelance reporter Adora Namigade in the building. Adora, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you so much.
I also want to give a huge thank you to every single person who is listening right now, whether you're new to the podcast or you're old, whether you got put on through our Hey Chicago newsletter or you found us by randomly scrolling on your social media. Regardless, we appreciate you being here. If this is your first episode, go ahead and dig through the crates, not only the episodes we've made over the last week, the last couple of months, but we've been here for the last 4 years and 1,000+ episodes. And trust me, there is something in there for every single person listening to this right now. On Fridays, we like to bring in our friends to break down some of the biggest stories happening in the city this week. But real quick, I wanted to remind y'all to take a listen to the sponsor episode we dropped in our feed with the Minocqua Visitors Bureau. Minocqua, Wisconsin is north of Madison, and you're going to hear all about why you should make it your next spring, summer, road trip, whatever the case may be. I myself just got back after being out all week, so I'm trying to get outside in Chicago this weekend. I heard the weather has been improving a little bit, slowly but surely, over the last couple of days. Heather, what's something you looking forward to doing this weekend?
Well, it's Mother's Day, and I've got 2 kids, and I am looking forward to laying in a dark room and not being asked to drive anybody anywhere for any reason, because they do not tell you when you have teenagers, your whole role is to give them money and to take them places. That's it. That's all my job as a mother is. And I would like a day off. I would like a day of rest.
No more carpools, no more piggy banks. Well, Heather, I want that for you. We got some more Mother's Day wishes later in the episode, but I am hoping that you get that rest, that maybe even somebody brings you some breakfast in bed. It ain't going to be up to your standards, but I'm hoping that it'll at least get the day started off right.
Well, I can't claim any sort of stolen valor here. I do not cook. So my wonderful husband does all of the cooking. So he routinely cooks me Sunday breakfast. So I do not want him to listen to this and be like, how dare she imply that she's slaving in the kitchen? Because that is my role. So let's just be clear that if I was left to my own devices, I'd be eating out. So that's what it is.
Adora, over to you. What is something you are looking forward to this weekend?
Well, this weekend, I'm in sunny Los Angeles right now visiting my in-laws. They are great people.
Come on.
So I'm excited to continue to eat oranges from the yard. And also, we're going to a wedding that is supposed to be very, very lovely. So I'm just excited for that.
Come on, some LA sun, got a wedding. You got fruit right in the yard?
Literally, there's an orange tree like in the yard. There's like a basket on a stick, and you like put it up in the tree, and it helps you grab an orange, and then the orange falls in the basket, and then you take it out. It's like so romantic.
I feel like I would like be moving in slow motion, like the sun rays coming through the tree. Well, I love that for both of y'all. I hope y'all have an enjoyable weekend. But we got to slow our brakes a little bit and back up. We still got to get through this episode. And Heather, I'm going to start with you. And for listeners, we are going to start in a very difficult place this morning. I want to warn you, we will be talking about explicit police violence. Earlier this week, Heather, you wrote about a decision from the Civilian Office of Police Accountability handed down relating to the squad of officers who routinely stopped Chicagoans and violated their constitutional rights. This is the same squad that stopped and ultimately shot and killed Dexter Reed in a hail of gunfire a little bit over a year ago. Heather, can you catch us up on this story and talk us through not only COPA's decision, but both the mayor and the police chief, Larry Snelling's response to it?
I've done a lot of reporting on sort of the aftermath of the Dexter Reed shooting. And several months ago, I reported that COPA, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, which is the agency charged with investigating police misconduct, had developed information that there had been essentially a pattern and practice of traffic stops on the West Side that routinely did not follow department rules and violated people's constitutional rights. The first two traffic stops that triggered complaints, that we learned this week that those probes had been completed. And in both cases, both the COPA leaders and Police Superintendent Larry Snelling found a host of violations, in all 47 rule violations. And COPA and Superintendent Snelling agreed that the 5 officers who pulled over and shot Dexter Reed after he shot one of the officers should be suspended for a combined 91 days. So these two traffic stops that were found to be in violation of departmental policy happened less than 3 weeks before Dexter Reed was killed. And in one of the stops, the circumstances are almost identical to the series of events that led up to Dexter Reed's death. And this is important because we don't know whether the officers involved in Dexter Reed's shootings violated any rules. That shooting is still under investigation. But it shows that Dexter Reed was not the first Black Chicagoan to be stopped in this area by these officers, and that perhaps had COPA or other police department officials gotten word of these sort of, violations or these problems of traffic stops, it at least raises the possibility that perhaps Dexter Reed's death could have been avoided. And this is all the subject of a lawsuit that is working its way through the federal court system. The city council a couple weeks ago declined to settle the lawsuit filed by Dexter Reed's family for $1.25 million. Now, that decision isn't yet final, but these sort of sustained misconduct findings will certainly be an issue in that lawsuit, and it could really expand the city's liability, because one of the things that this federal court will decide, eventually perhaps a jury, would be is if this was something that the city and the police department should have known about and did not stop it. And that is, I think, an important thing for Chicagoans to understand as the police department continues to say that it's working diligently to reform itself under another federal court order.
I think what's really frustrating in reading this story is the description of the stop is so common to so many Chicagoans. And it's not just Chicagoans, right? And it ain't just Black Chicagoans on the West and South Side, even though Black Chicagoans have been sounding this alarm for as long as any of us can possibly remember and or conceive. They talk about the officers not operating their body cams immediately. You're being told by one that you weren't wearing a seatbelt. The other one saying you're being pulled over for tinted windows. You're being told to get out of your car. And if you ask what your badge number is, right, your constitutional right. If you ask to have your supervisor arrive, your constitutional right. If you refuse to get out of your car or to let your car be searched without a warrant, your constitutional right. This is something I have lived through. This is something my family has lived through for decades and decades. So this idea that there's still this feeling of like, oh, is this a pattern in the city of Chicago? How much research data do we need to know? The jump out boys it's a common term in our vernacular. Let me just say it like that. And so to see both of these stops, sort of diligently recorded by COPA, laid out over 40 violations, and then to hear that my constitutional rights being violated is worth 3 days, 20 days, despite the fact that when officers are going through all of these threats, 5 or 6 sort of surrounding your car, that is a life-threatening situation. That is not just another day where I happen to get pulled over. As we listen to, Officer Snelling, kind of talk about his agreeing, the mayor kind of came out with a response. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's difficult, and the mayor is in a tough spot, to be quite honest, because the officers under their labor agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police have the right to ask an arbitrator to determine whether Superintendent Snelling's determination of suspension is appropriate.
They get to appeal this.
Right. So these determinations are not final. And if the mayor sort of weighed in one side or the other side, that could potentially complicate that sort of legal process and compromise the due process rights that the police officers have. However, I think it's also sort of part of, and why I asked the mayor about it, is that the former head of COPA, Andrea Kirsten, urged that these officers be stripped of their police powers because of their actions during the Dexter Reed stop and the results of the preliminary COPA investigation. Superintendent Snelling, as far as I know, has declined to do so. I asked the mayor whether he thought that those officers should continue to have police powers while this sort of legal process works itself out. And that was the mayor's response, that he wasn't going to rush to judgment. The other sort of part of this is that there's an ongoing debate over whether Chicago police officers should be banned from making those kind of stops that you described, like for a seatbelt or for a broken headlight or an expired license plate registration. Superintendent Snelling forcefully told me that he believes that those kinds of stops keep Chicagoans safe. However, the Chicago Police Oversight Board, the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, a majority of those members disagree, saying that the stops do not sort of have any public safety benefit and are much too dangerous both for Chicagoans and for police officers, and that they should be banned in most cases. Eventually, that decision could be made by the federal judge overseeing the consent decree process, but it is a clear split between the CCPSA, Superintendent Snelling, and to be honest, the mayor has not forcefully said sort of where he stands one way or the other. He said that these kind of stops were egregious and that are only used on the south and the west side, which would seem to indicate some sort of sympathy for, or openness to banning these stops, but he hasn't weighed in yet.
What's interesting about the police chief's push back on the desire to wrangle in these stops is the fact that they could not make the argument of these 3 that are being probed that these stops led to Chicagoans being more safe, that led to any of the 3 of us feeling more safe or actively being more safe. The position that Chicagoans are being put in these stops, and the idea that we should just suck them up because they make us safer, no matter what the prevailing reason is, which again may not be consistent from even the officers on the scene, knowing that Black Chicagoans are much more likely to be on the other end of these stops. This sort of kind of like talking out of both sides of your face to say, hey, we know they violated multiple constitutional rights. 3 to 25 days. However, these squads should still go on. These stops still should be made. And no one in this is even talking about the fact that 200,000 plus traffic stops weren't recorded in the exact same way. And so then when we get the numbers at the end of the year that say, hey, traffic stops are down, we then can't even trust those numbers, Heather. And so it feels like we're being asked in the constant face of distrust, evasion, improper documentation, we're still being asked to trust a unit that has not given us any reason to.
Well, this is the dilemma that's at the heart of the consent decree, right? These reforms were designed to restore trust in the Chicago Police Department after decades of scandals and sort of repeated instances of police violence that has been found to be, unjustified. The question is whether 6 years into the consent decree, whether anything sort of fundamentally has changed. And I think that's a fair question for Chicagoans to answer and to ask.
We will continue to follow up on these stories. Make sure you're tapped in by subscribing to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, at chicago.citycast.fm.
Hey, it's executive producer Simone Alicea here, and I want to let you know about what's happening at the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts in Skokie. They've got a packed season with some unique shows that I don't think you'll want to miss. If you got a mom who's a Taylor Swift fan, on Mother's Day, May 11th, they're running Taylor Shines The Laser Spectacular. Yes, that is a laser light show set to T-Swift hits. Swifties are also going to have another chance to celebrate her music in September when Vitamin String Quartet performs arrangements of Taylor Swift songs from Bridgerton, so you can live out your Bridgerton ball fantasies. If you're looking for something a little more contemplative, Bill W. and Dr. Bob opens May 30th. It's about the actual founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a raw, moving, and inspiring story. But of course, you know me, I'm all about the games. So I've got my eye on Clue, a walking mystery in July. It's a live-action, interactive experience inspired by the board game. And come on, I absolutely think I could solve the mystery, assuming I'm not the one who did it, I guess. I'd much rather solve the mystery. You can check out the full lineup and grab your tickets now at northshorecenter.org.
I talk about my moms all the time on the show, so y'all know how much I love Mama T, but I'm gonna be real, buying gifts for her can be a little tough, right? When she sees something, she like it, she just get it. So for her recent birthday, I needed something that said, I appreciate you, I love you, I'm thinking about you all the time, and I ultimately landed on the Aura frame. It's a digital picture frame. In fact, it's the best digital photo frame according to the people over at Wirecutter. My mom sees it every day on the table in her entryway. I've uploaded photos of some of our favorite family moments together, like a huge throwback of all of us together at Kalahari up in the dunes, a recent one with my siblings and my mom at a Bulls game. I got a picture with our grandparents. Plus, anybody can add pictures from wherever they live, and she'll see them almost immediately and know we're thinking about her. Aura has a great deal for Mother's Day coming up. For a limited time, listeners can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off plus free shipping on their best-selling Carver matte frame. That's Aura, A-U-R-A, frames.com, promo code CityCast. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Adora, earlier this week, we discussed the report that came out of the Cook County Treasurer's Office, which found the imbalance of our property tax appeal system, which is leaving the county's lowest income homeowners paying so much more. Nearly $2 billion in property taxes shifted onto homeowners from businesses from 2021 to 2023. You came out a story this week that talked about the difficulties of navigating the appeals process and these unequal outcomes. Can you tell us what you found?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting timing, by the way, for that report to come out in the midst of kind of doing this long form reporting about the assessment appeals process. But basically, in short, we found out that it is very cumbersome for people to appeal their property taxes, honestly, regardless of their income. Right now, the North Triad, so the north suburbs of Cook County, are the ones undergoing their reassessment. So the county does assessments in thirds, and the north suburbs have the people with the highest incomes. But even those people who I interviewed for the story are struggling with their property taxes, and they're struggling to keep their assessments at a level that they feel is fair. So, for example, one woman who I interviewed, she is a widow and she lives by herself. She lives in a house and she's like, okay, this house is kind of too big for me. But at the same time, she feels really emotionally tied to it because that's the house that she was in with her husband before he died. And she's like, appealing my assessment and learning how to appeal my assessment and learning how to do so effectively, that all really feels like a part-time job. And she's like, I don't understand how you can really do this if you like have a family or if you're not as educated as I am. She's a sociologist. So it's just very difficult for people to do the appeals. We also interviewed a township assessor, and the township assessors, not sure why we don't have this in the city, by the way. No one could answer me this directly. I definitely am jealous that we don't have this, but they basically have someone built in who can help them learn the appeals process and or directly file the appeals for them on their behalf. So I interviewed one of them and he's like, hey, I do this day in, day out. I've done more than like 1,000 in the year 2024. So if I understand that this is a difficult process, I can't imagine just an average taxpayer like in Chicago having to go it on their own. It also turns out you can have a tax lawyer do it for you, but the tax lawyers are not as successful as when you do it yourself. So it's kind of painted as like, yeah, just go appeal your assessment, no problem. But then there are all these problems people face when it actually comes time to appeal that assessment.
What's the most difficult part of this process? Because I remember listening, our producers talking about it earlier, and they said about 64% of businesses appeal versus 27% of homeowners. And I was like, I can understand why that makes sense in the idea that for a business, this is like an expense, like this is an important expense to invest in. And for a homeowner, this may be something you're sort of hit with at the time when you're getting your property tax bill. What's the most difficult part for homeowners to navigate?
Yeah. And by the way, the businesses are required to have a lawyer on staff. So it's almost like built in for them, right? And then the homeowners, we're just floundering out here learning as we go. The most difficult part for homeowners is that there's nothing objective about the process where you can really look and say, okay, if you do these 5 things, if you show these 5 things, you're definitely going to have a successful appeal. There's no telling what's going to make your appeal successful. It's all about comparing your house to other houses. So that could also present issues because what if the houses you're comparing to are overassessed? What if they're underassessed? Then it's a comparison game, but it's not necessarily rooted in all these other houses that you're comparing to have properly assessed values. So that I think is the most confusing part for people is just, I don't really know what they're looking for. How about comparing it to other properties? It's all comparison. The issue though also is there's not enough information about the homes that are being assessed to really assess them accurately. So for example, there's a role called field inspector. The field inspectors of the Cook County Assessor's Office, they go inside businesses and look within the business properties to help determine the value. But when they go to homes, they don't go inside the homes. So there's not really updated information about what the inside of people's homes looks like. And that is really what also skews the assessment values. They're only judging based on the outside of the house.
This is really, really complicated and really, really important, especially for how government runs, because property taxes are sort of the backbone of how we pay for police, how we pay for schools, how we pay for fire services. Like this is sort of the center of how our government operates. And it is extremely painful for people who are struggling to make ends meet because you can't cut back on property taxes. You can't say to the government, you know what, fam, I can't this year. So you're going to have to take a little bit. The other thing is that this report from the Cook County Treasurer's Office, which I should mention was really put together by a team of former Chicago Tribune journalists that Treasurer Maria Pappas has put together, has really found that the people who benefit from this system are frankly like me, people who live in the suburbs, who understand how the system works, and who can appeal their property taxes every single year. That means that I benefit from these sort of inequities, whereas people who live on the south and the west side, we know now are less likely to appeal their taxes, which means that they're paying whatever sort of the assessed value is and sort of not taking advantage of this sort of built-in sort of appeal system. So when I appeal my taxes, it's a zero-sum game. Somebody else is picking up the rest of that because the city and the county are saying we need X amount of money to pay for all of these services. So if I get to pay less, somebody else has got to pay more. And it works the same with businesses and homeowners. If you've got somebody whose whole job it is to make sure that your business pays less in property taxes, you're going to be in a better position than somebody who is working 3 jobs, trying to keep ends meet, and trying to stay in the home that maybe their aunt or uncle bought like a decade ago or more longer than that and are struggling to hang on to as sort of the main part of their generational wealth. And, this is one of those systems that we don't necessarily see every day, but that really reinforces the inequity that Chicago is struggling with. It's a cliche to say Chicago's a tale of two cities, but this is one of the situations, one of the structural things that creates those inequities. It is such a complicated system that there's no easy way for elected officials or politicians to sort of make it a more fair system. Now, both Cook County Assessor Fritz Kagi and Treasurer Maria Pappas say they're really committed to that, but there is no easy fix, especially because if you change the system, you threaten government's ability to sort of keep the lights on. And in this era of will federal funding exist for Illinois and Chicago in 6 months is a very complicated and frankly frightening issue to tackle.
Because we were talking about the tax system kind of being the way that we fund all the services that are available to us publicly. People on the South Side, a lot of them who, like we interviewed last year for a story on the South suburbs, they don't get to see the benefits of their taxes. So if you're not actually seeing the fruit of your taxes, then it makes it especially hard to pay those taxes.
When we talk about the relationship between property taxes and schools and police and roads, and yet in the places in which they are having the most difficult burden, taking on the toughest chunk of the pie, their roads are also the worst and the less likely to get shoveled on time or fixed on time, or their schools are more vulnerable to being closing, or police commit more constitutional violations in their neighborhood. You can understand why people are increasingly frustrated about, again, a property tax system that is so in control of government officials when they need to raise revenues. And yet, as we've talked about, that those services do not trickle down equitably or equally. Adora, throughout your reporting, did anybody offer solutions to how we can make a more equitable property tax system?
It's tough. So the assessor himself said that there's a data set called the Uniform Appraisal Data Set that lists different characteristics about the inside of people's homes. And he's like, if we had access to that data set, then that would really help us make the assessments more accurate, which would make people's tax bills more fair and equitable. But then other people like Samantha Steele, who's on the board of review and who's going to run for assessor next year, is like, you need to send people out in person to look at properties in person and see what the characteristics of the homes are and update them that way. So I haven't heard like consensus from different government parties on how to fix the system, but I have heard those different ideas.
Well, Adora, we appreciate you following up on this reporting. We will drop a link in our show notes to this story. Adora, I want to stay with you. You brought in a story about acupuncture. It's a treatment that I have heard a little bit about. I have seen it throughout my life on television and things like this, but it seems like Chicagoans are getting access to acupuncture for completely new reasons. Can you walk us through this?
It was cool to see the history of acupuncture here and its like use cases today. So basically, the Young Lords and the Black Panthers in the 1970s really helped introduce this treatment to Black and brown people to help them heal from trauma, to help them heal from different addictions they were suffering, different stressors, anxiety, cravings even. And the acupuncture we're talking about here uses 5 needles and places them in different parts of the ear. And it's supposed to just really help the body relax and help you process these different ailments that you're suffering. So the whole story is that they're trying to see if they can make it legal to bring this treatment back with having people train to do that treatment specifically versus becoming licensed acupuncturists, which would be a lot more work to do because it also is apparent that in the 70s, people were just kind of learning how to do that particular form of acupuncture and applying it to patients.
Many people may not be familiar, but acupuncture has its roots in Chinese medicine and goes back centuries and centuries. Typically, when I see it, it's like you said, it's a bunch of tiny needles around the body. Traditionally, what is acupuncture used for, and how does it relate in like this current use case?
So they're saying a lot of Chicagoans, especially Black and brown people, are just undergoing a lot more stress. Like we were talking about in Heather's story, right? Black and brown people are the victims of more like police violence. We're the victims of health problems. We are the victims of traumas happening in our neighborhoods. We live in like more polluted areas than other people in the city. There are just so many factors that Black and brown people are dealing with that other residents are not dealing with. And so they're saying, wouldn't it be helpful to have this alternative treatment that is not high cost and that is not based in pharmaceuticals to help people move through all these things?
Have you ever done acupuncture before, Adora?
No, I would love to, though. I'm here for all the alternative things. Like, sign me up. Super green, crunchy person over here. So I will definitely try it. I am happy to try it.
Shout out to WBEZ's Elvia Malegon. We will drop a link to this story in our show notes. Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends the same way, and that's with some good news. Oh, that's my first of the week. That thing was fire. That thing was kind of good. Heather, what is your good news for us? The last time you was here, you ain't have an animal story breaking your like 14 episode streak. Are you back with the animals this week?
I am back with the animals this week, and I am again out here repping for Chicago's birds because I was one of those basic people during the pandemic who became obsessed with birds and bird feeders. But so Chicago has, and this should not be news to anybody, a lot of rats, right? And nobody likes rats. I mean, if you do, please don't send me an email. I
was gonna say, let's not say nobody, because people be in our inbox telling us they got rats as pets
before emailing me. Period.
Yeah.
Report is junk.
So you want to take care of the rats, right? Because you don't want them where they shouldn't be. And the city has tried every single possible way to get rid of rats, and from everything from dry ice and poison. And there's a new sort of tactic out there. We're going to start in Lincoln Park, which is ground zero for rats in Chicago. They're going to try putting out birth control for rats. So the idea is that the rats will eat it and then they won't be able to reproduce. But unlike raticide or poison, the birth control will not hurt the birds. So, it's the great circle of life. The rats eat the poison, the birds eat the rats, or the poison itself, and the birds get sick and die. And this birth control won't set off that bad series of events. So hopefully it will do more to get rid of the rats that we don't want while protecting the birds that we do want. And I am always obsessed with these sort of critter stories for the city, because one of the very first stories I covered as the City Hall reporter for the late lamented DNA Info was about squirrels getting into garbage cans. And that was really an eye-opening examination of Chicago's rodent population.
I do appreciate that we're at least thinking about Chicago's larger animal population as we manage arguably the most, they take a lot of our brunt, even though they're just trying to get by and survive as well, right? Manage their babies, get some food.
Wow. So much empathy for them.
They're just trying to live. Hey, after going to the great pigeon rescue, because I used to call pigeons rat with wings, once I grew empathy for pigeons, it was only a matter of time before I got them for rats. It was only a matter of time. I am going to round us out today with my good news. As Heather mentioned at the very tippity top, it is Mother's Day weekend. So I want to give a shout out to all of the moms in my life, including, of course, Mama T, my Aunt Michelle, my cousin Jackie, all of the mothers in my family, one of my friends, Gabby, my friend Nura is a new mom as of a couple of months ago. Shout out to Adrian Nazone, all of the moms in Taylor's family as well. I'm really excited to celebrate with my mom, to talk with friends and family. I love to send out a good, happy Mother's Day. I recently went to see my best friends play with our high school speech coaches. And so, Susan Safransky, happy Mother's Day to you as well. I'm going to throw it over to y'all. Heather, you got any Mother's Day shout outs you want to give?
Well, I got to shout out my mom, who was the original working mom and who sort of set the standard for me. And she is a great grandmother to my girls. And, I think that, we all just sort of stand on each other's shoulders. And it's, I think I am always amazed to sort of work with other women in Chicago journalism who are also mothers, Brandis Friedman, Sarah Karp. There are not many of us in Chicago journalism because it is hard to be a mom. It is hard to work. It is hard to be a working mom in journalism. Stephanie Lulay of Block Club Chicago.
Becky Vivi, Ariane Nettles.
So special shout out from me to all of my fellow moms in Chicago journalism, keeping it down.
Adora, over to you. Give some Mother's Day shout outs.
Absolutely. I'm going to shout out my mom as well. I have to start with her. She brought me into this world, and she is the person who believes in me like most of anyone. Like, my spouse believes in me a lot too, but I think my mom has always been like, if I'm like, I want to do something, she's like, go do it. You can do this. And she'll like write me a plan. She's sending me texts. She's sending me YouTube videos about the thing I said I wanted to do. So I just really appreciate that she has so much confidence in me. And then also my mother-in-law, because I got married last year and I'm at my mother-in-law's house right now. And she is so kind, so hardworking. And it's been beautiful to understand my spouse more through learning about her, seeing her habits, like little quirks that they share in common and stuff. So I'm grateful that she raised my spouse, If it weren't for her, he wouldn't be around.
Oh, man. Happy Mother's Day to all of the mothers in your life as well. Again, I just want to give a huge shout out to my mother, Mama T. She is, as we're speaking, currently in D.C. with her little brother, my uncle, who is in the hospital after an unfortunate car accident. And my mother, as long as I know, has not only taken care of me and my siblings, but has also been a second mom to all of her younger siblings throughout her life. And so I know that this time is especially tough on her. And so I'm sending you all my love. To all of the moms who listen, to all of the moms of all of our listeners, to Simone's mom, to Michelle's mom, we really appreciate y'all for being here. We like to say on the podcast that we are your mama's favorite podcast, and we mean that actually respectfully. And so happy Mother's Day to everybody this weekend who celebrates. I also know this can be a weekend that is very tough for a lot of families, for a lot of individuals. And so please, I hope that for everyone who is listening, you can find some joy this weekend. I want to give a huge thank you to our guest today. We could not make what is our listeners' favorite show of the week. From WTTW, Heather Sharon, we appreciate you being here.
Happy to be here. Anytime. I think I live here now.
Pretty much.
So that's fine. That's cool. I love it.
And freelance reporter extraordinaire, Adora Namigade. Thank you for joining, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Always fun to listen to and be a part of. So thank you.
Before we get out of here, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who makes CityCast Chicago possible. All the people have been holding it down this week. Our executive producer is Simone Alisea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor is Emmy Mack. Our roving producer this week was Francisco Kilgore. Our social media manager is Rick Homuth. The music we all love is from the homie Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Additional music this week from Gloria Tales and the New Fools, courtesy of epidemicsound.com. Before we sign off for the weekend, make sure you go back and listen to the sponsor episode we dropped with Minocqua Visitors Bureau about all the fun things to do in Minocqua, Wisconsin. And I'm gonna be real with you, I hadn't heard of it really before this interview, and now they put me on. I'm kind of excited to check it out. Maybe you're gonna get some ideas for your next road trip. If you enjoy the show, please share us with your friends and family. We do not gatekeep over here. And by we do not gatekeep, I mean we gatekeep only a very, very little bit over here. But not the podcast, not the newsletter. Send it to the people you love, send it to the people you hate. I could care less. I'll talk to you soon. Peace.